Greetings, and welcome to another episode of 1320 Time Stream, the harmonic editions. Well, let's jump right into it here. We're just starting the 10th run of the Tzolk'in. Yesterday was the last day, the spectral sun in the 9th harmonic run, which constituted the throat chakra. So here, in case you're unfamiliar with this particular part of this meditation / embodiment, is that each one of the 13 runs represents one of your chakras in the 13 chakra system. A very simple analogy of that, as far as where are they, is there is another chakra in between each one of the classic chakras. And so in this respect, between the third eye and the throat chakra is the architect. Though it is not directly and symmetrically in between, the architect is, however, if you go to the level of the temples, find your two temples. Also find right at the point of the back of your skull, where your spine meets your skull in that little divot. And also find right where your nose, the bridge of your nose, meets your eyebrows. Right between your eyes, there's a divot there too. If you look at the divot above the nose and between the eyes, and then also the one in the back of the skull and your two temples, those 4 points quadrillate where the architect chakra is in the middle of. So it's actually just below the third eye properly. And so the energetic description, or the place description, is between the throat chakra and third eye, but it's actually really close to just being right under the third eye. That's where our architect is. I encourage you to just, go into that space, to learn how to sense these new chakras, to breathe energy and vitality through them, and just be in that space for a little bit. For some people, it can take a little bit to discover the energy pulse, to cultivate your connection with the flow of the energy of the 13 chakra system, because we may not be used to feeling that so-called wiring or that luminous pulse in our body. But I assure you, it is there. So we're beginning the 10th run today, which is the architect chakra. Today being marked and signified by the crystal dragon, which is also the 12th day in the white dog wave spell. Second last day in that. So let's move over. So what we have here, again, is what's called the codon coda, but essentially it is a map of the 64 or 65, even though there's only classically 64 actual codons and 64 proper harmonics. It's known as 65 harmonics because the 33rd is known as the void harmonic, and is essentially the harmonic that doesn't exist, and is kind of an exploration of the 0 point, things of this nature. And so, though there's 64 harmonics, it's called the 65 harmonics, because there is in fact 65 4-day cycles, and what really constitutes a harmonic is the 4-day cycles. But what we have here is a descriptive parameter that unifies 64 of those 4-day cycles with the DNA codons, which is also represented through Richard Rudd's work as the gene keys. And so this particular work here is an association with the gene keys work, not in its own accord, but as a descriptor to describe the quality that is within these cycles. And so it also gives us a very new and comprehensive look at the gene keys work, and also allows them to be interpreted in such an order as they have in fact never been interpreted in. And that is the order that the harmonics unfold in. And so in my work with this, and even we've had I think we've had at least 5 videos of this nature now, 5 harmonics, which represent 4-day cycles. A little series of videos. And so I find it's really interesting because a lot of them so far actually have the chakra theme. So far, a number of them really had that throat chakra theme. And it was really beautiful to see how in a work of this nature that has never been expressed, and it was not intended by any intentional means outside of the universe just intending it through us, to convey an energetic connection of the chakra location in the body and its kind of energetic, its quality being represented by the transmissions within the gene keys themselves, touching on certain topics that I as well also had communicated in little talks such as what we're having now, or in little things that I say here and there while recording the harmonic editions of the 1320 time stream episodes. So the reason I'm sharing that is because it's just another invitation into the sentient structure and the sentient intelligence that makes up that structure that we are embodying, that we're engaging, and we're communicating with in unique ways. So let's get into this here. We're in the first harmonic of the 10th run. A run is a set of 20 days. It's a harmonic run, kind of meaning there's like a run of harmonics one after another, and so there's 5 in each run. So even though it is harmonic 46, properly it's the 46th actual harmonic, I will also just name from 1 to 5. Like on every run there's harmonic 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But that can be confusing because I can be talking about a whole bunch of different numbers and be referring all to the same thing. I could be saying this is harmonic 1 on run 10. I could also say appropriately that it is harmonic 46. I could also say that it is the harmonic associated with codon 39. Right? And those are 3 associations. That's not even me talking about the inverse, which if you see the small white number on top, the inverse is 20. And the inverse, if you really, this is slightly more advanced, it is the opposite. So if you go like the center, which is marked by the codon 4, if you go over 1, 2, 3, we're at codon 39. Now, if you go down in the middle to 49 and you go 1, 2, 3 over, you will find the inversion of number 39 down, which is number 38. You'll notice that all the yins and yangs are traded off. And so what's yin in one is yang in the other, and so forth and so on. So that's your inversion. And so the entire fractal harmonic network of the organization with the Zolkin, every single one is an inversion. Take a look at number 1 and number 65, which is the top left and the bottom right. They're the complete opposite of each other. If you take a look at harmonic 2 and harmonic 64, which is codon 43 and codon 23, they as well are a reflection of each other. So forth and so on. As you move down on the left side and up on the right side, and then move over on the left side to the second row, and then move over to the left from the far right side to the second last row, and continue moving up on the far right rows, you're moving up, and on the far left rows, you're moving down. And it's a radial pattern. It's showing you the reflective capacity. And so there is a meditation in itself, and a wisdom and a study in itself on the sacred arrangement. Now, I feel it's very appropriate. Now, I'm not planning this out. I'm just kind of channeling. I'm just speaking about what feels relevant. The reason I say things like it's very appropriate, because sometimes I will recognize, oh, wait a minute, this kind of represents a certain energy. And so for me, I feel it's very appropriate that we're actually speaking about this now, because we are getting into the architect chakra. And one may say, well, what is the quality of that? Well, the architect chakra brings direct awareness to the architecture of reality. Its very nature between the throat chakra and the third eye being a visual center, the ability to kind of witness that inner vision, to witness the immaculateness of creation with the inner eye. The throat chakra, you could say, is the vibrational network of oneness, or the 5th dimension, and inherently you kind of have the 5th and 6th dimensions appropriately to a certain description, even though those are very varied descriptions depending on how you're referring to our relationships with energy networks. So where I'm going with that is that the 5th dimensional constant of vibration is showing a spherical resonance or continuum which unifies us into a spherical consciousness. It's a singularity. in there. And so the architect, between that and the visual centers, kind of shows us metaphysical architecture, the Platonic solids and those kind of things, cubes, tetrahedrons, dodecahedrons, icosahedrons, and octahedrons, and then the entire regime of the Catalan solids and the Archimedean solids, which there is 13 of both. And so there is a number of solids, which are all these kind of, basic Platonic to much more advanced type of geometries, which have a interdimensionally architecturalized significance. And we start getting here into planetary grid networks. We start getting into the very shape of space. There's Nassim Haramein did a video showing the 64 tetrahedron grid with the what was it called, the vector matrix or the cube octahedron. And so this is going into what's known as the architecture of space. And so even the unseen, the very lattice that holds the guise or illusion of reality, that imagery is hanging, so to speak, or latched onto or connected to an interface geometry. It's kind of like the circuitry in a computer or something like that. And so the architect chakra is the cycle where we're going into that, what is called architectronics. Right? That's one of the terms utilized to express that in systems of this nature. On a more fundamental physical level, we could say that this is that run where we're going to go into our own personal things. Maybe you're a carpenter, maybe you're building houses, maybe you're an engineer, maybe you build engines, maybe you build motors, maybe you engineer high rises, maybe you're wondering what the next free energy device build is. It doesn't really matter because we're talking about architecture, right? The architect chakra is that energy in any of its fundamentalness. And this is why going into the most precise level of that fundamentality, we see divine shape. As an example, the pyramid that we're consistently meditating around our joints every day as the Mayan pyramid meditation, that is a fundamental architecture. And so it's these fundamental architectures outside of space, they actually have no relationship with space yet, that create and allow for the spatial variations, which goes into essentially the constructions, maybe Giza pyramids, Maya pyramids. They go into, why is the earth even created in the shape that it is? Why is the human body created in the shape that it is? This architectronics actually answer all of these questions because they supersede the manifestation or the causation, the causality of it, the celestial existentialism of our existence, of our reality. And so the nature of this particular chakra actually answers a lot of our fundamental reality queries as a human being. If we can get into that more and attune to it, all the answers are there. Outside and inside of the mind, outside and inside of description. We begin to really, in these higher spaces, we really begin to bridge paradox. And so there's no such thing as a polar binary in reflection to, it's one or the other. That doesn't exist anymore. What exists, like fundamentally and pretty much absolutely, is a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. And so we have these advanced dynamics, these dynamisms of ingredients of these sacred coded languages. And so they all start working together. And it's like, what came first, chicken or the egg? Well, no, they're both just here simultaneously. And a lot of it begins to defeat our originism conceptualities, where there's, a linear, like, this came before that, this beget that. That doesn't exist. That's a non-existential. Everything simply exists in a similitude and a simultaneitude. So it is in similitude to the, meaning it is in likeness to the, and it is simultaneously simultaneous. So one thing did not become in the likeness of another. Everything is in the likeness of each other, and it simply exists. And so there is an architectural constant that helps us really grasp how these fundamentalities work in a very practical way with us and how they can be embodied. And so how this shows up for you in a way that's important for you, how you attune to it, is up to you. And so this takes on the form that you needed to take on for yourself, and will just naturally take the form that it needs to take on to meet you in the way that is necessary for you, because we're working here with interdimensional intelligence. And why do I say interdimensional? I don't say interdimensional to say, oh look, it's like some alien thing that's outside of yourself. No, intelligence, all of creation, is a connected singular being. While there's alien consciousness and all this kind of stuff, it's all just you. But it's different aspects of you locked away from your causal mentality. And so it looks and feels like it's different, but it's just another pocket and alignment with the totality of yourself. And so when I say interdimensional intelligence, it's the intelligence that is you that doesn't grasp, because we're actually like really spanning out of objectivity here, but what it does is it encompasses the league that is interdimensionality and the fundamentality that is created from, you could say. And so yeah, that's really it. And so this is even taking a look at how some of the architecture of these sacred systems are built gives us a really good look at reality. Like if you were to look at the Tzolk'in proper, now very much like if you take a look at we'll go back here. If you take a look at the top left, the top right, the bottom left, and the bottom right, so they're all the green squares, add the numbers all together. Not the numbers that are written in regular number form, but the numbers that are written in dot bar notation. You'll notice that the 1 is a 1, that's a dot, that's easy. A 5 is a bar. And so the one on the bottom left, which is a bar and 2 dots, is 7. And so you have 1 on the top left, 7 on the bottom left, 13 on the bottom right, and 7 on the top right. Together, that's 28. Now, if you were to go, let's just go like, if you're on the top left, go down and then right ones. You're in the next green square. And so the next 4 mirror equal green squares. Oh, look, it's 28 again. And the next set, 28 again. And then the next set, 28 again. They're every single one in equal distance to each other is 28. You'll even realize that within that same compound, every single reflected equidistant unit, combination on the Tzolk'in itself, every single one is 28. Now, how is that possible to get a mathematical perfection that stable and that precise up in front of you on a grid? Because that is the 1320 architecture, and this is beyond something any human being can create. This is a living interdimensional intelligence, and as the mind begins to perceive and grasp the fundamentality that we're witnessing within this math harmony, this number harmony, then we begin to open up to the living motion of what this represents. What looks like a static, non-moving, coded picture in front of you is in fact a vast, moving, interdimensional intelligence, which many ancients know as the Hunab Ku, which is essentially, say, the galactic butterfly, or like very physically for us, or celestially, it is the center of our Milky Way. And so this is what we're receiving from the center of our Milky Way, factored through the singularity in Alcyon. Many also communicate that this system was brought to us by the Pleiadians, 7 sisters, things of this nature. And so this is source consciousness. This is not a reflection. This is not a reflection of anything. It's not a direct reflection of source consciousness. This is source consciousness. And as we allow the reflections in our own mind to settle and to dissipate, we interact. We don't see the source consciousness. There is an aspect, the seeing, but what we're talking about is a unobjectification, where the quantification is embodiment, embodying frequency. And so the externalization of the explanation of this type of frequency can no longer really be resolved as an objectification. Oh, this is a thing, this is that, this is described. It's interacted with. Very much like you can't really objectify an experience you share with one another that's built up of a whole millions of little nuances of smaller micro events, which are mental, emotional, physical, happenstance, time and space events, all working into something that becomes a sharing of energy with a person. And so this is what we're looking at, is a matrix of this nature where you're looking at the interdimensional dialect that is showing how and why energy flows in such a way. What you're looking at are the reasons why life is the way it is, why physical space or things are shaped in the way they are, why circles exist, right? Why your shoes smell like what dirty shoes smell like. Why does that aroma exist? Why do we even sense anything to begin with? How can we recognize anything? There is a frequency intaction kind of referencing something that keeps something intact and relevant. And so now I'm starting to make up words because we're bridging the unspeakable, kind of even the unknowable. Though it's kind of more in the unknown territory, but I'll leave that all up to you. We're starting to get to a point where I cannot be accurate because it is pure abstract. And so these systems allow you to embody the ability to navigate that fluidly. Okay, so coming into the 20 run of the Architect Chakra, getting into a little more of this cosmic science, or just the different formats of like the architecturality in general. It can be as cosmic or just natural, regular, as you want it, because this is really all about you. And it gives me a platform to go in a little deeper to some of the unspoken things, like when we talk about secrets, or when we talk, let's say you're watching YouTube videos looking for some kind of answer to something. Oh, how'd that rock formation? Was there aliens? All this kind of stuff. All of those answers are right in front of you. This one system can give you every single answer in the entire world. And yes, that may be a big boast, and some people may, whoa, you're full of shit. No, I'm not full of shit. Okay, what you're looking at is the matrix of pure potentiality and the mathematical constant behind it that allows its universal syntax to exist. And so every aspect of creation can be defined through this operations manifest. Now, am I inviting you to try to grasp it and know it? No. Because that will only find conflict, it'll only find mental turmoil, because the mind cannot objectify, grasp, understand, or know any of what I'm talking about. That is an impossibility, an absolute impossibility. But I do invite you, however, through your relevancies and what you trust, to engage and go to the places that are okay for you to go. Because we don't need to know everything. There is no use in actually collecting knowledge. We are a kind of like synchronizational cosmology, that we only need to synchronize with that which we are, our being. And that being energy then synchronizes to the other beingnesses or complementary or harmonic vibrations which support it and are supported by it. And so we are a harmonic network kind of coding stream, or like wave force. When we break down the human ego and the humanness in that description, we are a compartmentalized geometry which is part of a much larger kind of spherical interdimensional constant. And so these frequencies are actually allowing us to participate fully with that constant. And so this is where these sciences are going, and this is where a run like this, run 10, allows me to share this a little more with you and to kind of percolate some of this information into the abstract receptivity centers in your psyche, to be able to open you to this. No answer can ever be given to anyone. It's impossible, because we begin to completely dissolve the descriptive matrix of objectivity when we enter these realms. We become the force of creation itself. We begin to perceive life from the Godhead, so to speak, from the heart of the goddess. And there is no dialogue for that. There is no descriptive terminological force that can bring that to bear as me showing you an object or an artifact. There is, however, the ability to directly connect and share with other people by receiving and transmitting vibrationally attuned data. It could be, say, emotionally, telepathically, direct mental imagery. There's so many things that can be said, but then again, those are objectifications. And what I'm referring to through these objectifications are not specific artifacts of knowledge. They are invitations for you to discover and attune yourself vibrationally to senses you never knew existed. That's what we're doing here together as we're meditating. That's what we're doing as we're witnessing how these paradigms show up for us within synchronicity. How these energies are relevant for us daily. 4-day cycles, 13-day cycles, 20-day cycles, 7-day cycles. There are so many cycles. You don't have to learn them all, but you can attune to the relevant energies which allow you to synchronize with what's relevant to your, say, destiny pattern. Okay, so we're developing those new senses. Those brand new senses, which are ancient and eternal. They actually can't be new or old. Because all of vibration is a constant of this effervescent now. What level of that now are you attuned to? That is the singular question that's being asked here. If you're like, well, this is a vast thing, yes. So you have to recognize simultaneously how big you are as the magnitude, because you are all of this. But the experience you're having demands that you respect how minuscule and how small you are. And so this is where the idea of letting go and trusting, because you do not currently have the capacity to command the larger substrate. The only thing you can do is let go of your agreements with being separate from it, and then you become it. This is that divine will, that surrender energy. And so how to do that? What's a relevant type of release? What's a relevant type of surrender into that art or into that freedom which allows you to engage? And that's what you're discovering for yourself. And this voice of sharing and guidance may or may not help you along that path, but I feel to share these things with you here in this way. So look at that. We are in the 10th run, in the first harmonic in the 10th run, which is actually harmonic 46 or codon 39. And it will be paired with the 39th gene key. And so our next little mini, I was going to call it a mini episode, but there's, what would you call those? The part. The next part in the harmonic editions of 1320 time stream will be referring to the shadow, and then the gift, and then the siddhi, and then potentially a commentary of the 39th gene key. So stay tuned. We're going to get into that in a second, and this will be the first harmonic in our Architect Chakra run. Talk to you soon.